but they were Americans, so they couldn't be caught by the government. They had defrauded millions of dollars from people, but they got $4,500 from my bank account. This was before I got wise about things. This was many years ago. And let's just say that I'm not proud of that conversation. I was, oh, that's fine. I was screaming. I was out of control. I became a tank. We all can become tanks. Because I didn't have I didn't have $4,500. I had to borrow it. And so now I owe somebody and you know, luckily my bank had flagged it after the money had already gone out, and they were able to do banky things and get it back somehow. And so I'm so glad. But anyways, so when someone's become a tank, they cannot understand reason. I did not understand reason. I was screaming when I was like that. And if someone's like this, you have a boss who's like this, or whatever, someone in your family members, you mention Trump or Mamdani or whatever, and all of a sudden, blah, 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 they're not going to understand reason. They become a tank. Okay? So they'll view your logical attempts to explain your position, let's say you're 100% right, or simply, they'll see it as simply making excuses, or they'll think you're lying. Okay? So defending doesn't work, attacking doesn't work. Another thing we can do is we can withdraw. We may shut down, stomp off, withdraw from battle, slink off and lick our wounds, comfort ourselves in private with thoughts of hateful vengeance. Revenge fantasies. That's a fantasy that many people have. It's because we didn't get our way, we didn't get justice in a situation, oftentimes from a tank type of person. The problem with this is that the person who was a tank in front of us loses respect for folks who display this kind of behavior. It will encourage them to become tanks more often with you, increasing their volume, their insults, their public assaults of ridicule and anger. So if we can't attack, withdraw, or defend, what can we do? First off, you must stand your ground, soldier. Muster the courage to not attack, defend, or withdraw. First step is stand there, toe-to-toe, eye-to-eye. That's the first step. We've got to do that. When Jesus was being interrogated by Pilate, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked him. Jesus replied, "Is this your own question, or did others tell you about me?" So notice how Jesus doesn't answer Pilate's question. He's not going to engage on him. He's not engaged in his anger. Instead, he shows us what we're all supposed to do. He shows curiosity and asks more information. Lets the attack go. Curiosity is the key. That's one of my most oft-quoted messages. I say to myself over and over again, day in, day out. Shared it with you before. You probably know it by heart by now. Replace criticism and contempt with curiosity and compassion. Replace criticism and contempt with curiosity and compassion. If someone starts yelling at us, or cold shouldering us, or gossiping about us, or yelling at someone else, that makes us mad. Our natural impulse is to feel critical, to get angry. The Christ-like option, Jesus shows us, is instead, get curious. Instead of thinking that guy yelling at his kids is a jerk, we can think, I wonder what that poor man has lost control of him. Why? He lost control of himself in public. How embarrassed he'll feel later. What happened to him as a child? What's going on in his life to make him so wound up? I'm going to pray for him and for his precious children. Then, even if we have to step in, I have stepped in when someone was acting inappropriately several times. But I was able to jump in, so like this, was like, hey, I'm just here to stand between you and this person who they were attacking. I think you kind of got yourself triggered. I don't know what. Maybe they did something terrible. I don't know. But hey, I'm just here, going to stand between you. You get yourself calm and cool, brother. And it's always worked out. I've got hit a couple of times, but even then, I remember when I got hit in the chin. It's like, hey, that was a good hit. I almost broke my jaw. You're strong. You have some boxing background. And the guy was like, he couldn't believe my reaction. Wasn't angry. Didn't want to hang. I was actually affirming him for his good right cross. So, anyways, compassion always follows curiosity, whereas contempt always follows criticism. If I get critical, I'm going to have contempt for you. If I'm curious, eventually, compassion always flows. Instead of thinking, I can't believe how horrible that woman is disrespecting of her husband, it's going to have contempt for her, disgust. We're not allowed to feel anything but love for people according to the scriptures. Instead, we can see that terrible behavior of that woman and think, oh, how sad for her husband. And how sad for that woman. What a terrible education, terrible examples of parents and pastors and teachers she's had to have to treat another human being created in the very image of God like that. Their marriage can't possibly survive this. If it does, there will be such pain and despair, both parties, and worst of all, to their precious children. What can I do? Help, dear Jesus. I will pray, but how can I gently, lovingly help them? And we start looking for solutions and we start finding them. Jesus says, if we seek, we're going to find. It's what we're seeking. If I'm seeking ways to hurt you, I'm going to find good ways. If I'm seeking ways to help you, I'm going to find ways. Same situation, but curiosity led to compassion. As long as we replace any tendency to criticism with curiosity, it will lead to more naturally to Christ-like compassion. Truly amazing, miraculous emotion, and the best option. So Jesus has stood his ground when talking before Pilate. He got curious instead of critical. He asked questions, and let's continue in the story. Am I a Jew? Pilate reported. Your own people and their leading priests brought you to me for trial. Why? What have you done? So he's accusing. Jesus, what does he do? He decides to preach his gospel of love because that's all he did. He said, my kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But my kingdom is not of this world. Pilate is beginning to get, believe it or not, curious because he's seeing somebody act in a completely different way. Usually, condemned criminals like, I didn't do it. It's not my fault. Jesus is telling his story of love, of kingdom, love kingdom. So Pilate says, so you are a king. Jesus responded, you say I am a king. Actually, I was born, came into the world to testify to the truth. All who love the truth will recognize what I say is true. What is truth? Pilate asked. Now he's pondering. Now he's become compassionate and curious. And he went out to the people and told them, he didn't even find any more information just by the way Jesus was acting. He said, he is not guilty of any crime. See what Jesus did? He didn't attack, didn't defend, didn't withdraw. He stood there toe to toe, stood tall, soldier, showed us the way. He stood there courageously and didn't let Pilate control the conversation. He asked questions and he preached his gospel. A gospel of curiosity and compassion. I think I've shared before that Jesus asked questions of people 307 times in the Gospels. That's the majority of what he's doing. He's asking people questions. Most of what he did was show curiosity. And what always follows Jesus' curiosity? Compassion, healings. It always works. Criticize, never. Even those mean old Republicans, or those horrible Democrats, or those insurgents, or those radicals, or those evil terrorists. No. We ask, what happened, even in terrorists? What happened in their lives to so damage their beautiful souls, created in the very image of my beautiful Jesus? And all of a sudden, we see them as our sisters and brothers who are deceived and deluded, but our sisters and brothers. Let's break down what Jesus did before Pilate and apply it to us modern situations when confronted with a tank. Step one, remember I said, stand your ground. Don't give in to fight or flight. You might have to breathe, might have to count to 10 or whatever. Might have to. One person, I remember, I did this once. I would pretend like I was Mahatma Gandhi. I just watched that movie, and he was so sweet, and I was like, I'm Mahatma Gandhi. I'm saying to myself, I'm Mahatma Gandhi. I'm Mahatma Gandhi. I just said it over again and tried to act like what he would act in that situation while someone was yelling at me. Quietly look them in the eyes, whatever you have to do with yourself, and shift your attention to calming down your emotions. James tells us, understand this. My dear brothers, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak. That means before I speak, especially if I'm triggered in any way, I got to calm myself down, to be slow to speak. Give myself 3 or 4 seconds. Give myself a minute. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So first step is focus on ourselves, on calming our hearts, calming our anger. And if we're focused on that, we're not really hearing them too much. They're saying, you blankety blank, blah, 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 blah. Let them continue to accuse, yell, spout lies, tell us how wrong we are, how wicked our motives are, whatever. Our focus must be to look them in the eye courageously and calm our hearts so that we don't become a tank ourselves. And it's really hard. This might help. Jesus I was surprised to find this out this week. I've read these verses, and we all have a million times. What Jesus and the New Testament writers would call, when we get angry, they actually did call it being possessed by a demon of anger. Peter started yelling at Jesus once and said he chided him. I looked up the synonyms for chide, and they could have been translated as berate, blame, mock, scold, belittle, deride, scorn, scoff, put down, depreciate, lecture, ridicule. So he was doing one of those things. That Greek word can be translated in any of those ways. Peter, he's in Jesus' face. And he's saying it, you shouldn't say things like that. And he's talking to Peter like Jesus like that. Jesus turned and looked at he doesn't respond to him because he loves him anyways. He looked at the other disciples who chose to teach a lesson during this time. And he looked like he got their attention. So they're looking at him now. And he turns back to Peter and he says, Satan, get behind me. Wow. Jesus calls acting in anger being filled with Satan. So we can never be a tank, even though sometimes we're going to fall. We're human. We can't be a tank and be a follower of Jesus. I'm not saying you might be a follower of Jesus at other times, but when I'm being a tank, I am not a follower of Jesus at that particular moment in my life. Just like we can't be a gossiper or an adulterer. Same thing. When encountering a tank, we can't become a tank. Okay, step 2, you probably know this. We learned it before. What do you do when someone's yelling and screaming at you? You say something. What do you say? Yeah. Quiet listening. And if you don't know the name, sir, or boss, whatever, sir, hey, brother. Say as calmly. You've already calmed yourself. You spent your time, instead of being angry, calming yourself. Tactfully interrupt them by say their name 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, however many times, never letting you get angry. Eventually, they're going to stop. And then, now this is specific to tanks. We know we're supposed to backtrack and tell them what we heard, what they said, but with a tank, you got to do it really fast, okay? Even now, you're ministering them. You're showing you care by being able to tell them the gist of what they said, okay? But very briefly with a tank. You probably only have about a second because they're triggered. They're seeing red. So to get a word in edgewise, we have to be brief. And then number 4, share your truth. Here's some examples from the book I referenced earlier. The boss confronts you at the office and starts yelling at you in front of everybody else. Why isn't that project finished yet? You've worked on it for 2 weeks and you're already a month behind. Blackety blank, 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 blank. And everybody's looking at you and you're red-faced and screaming at you in front of the whole office. Calm yourself, stand toe-to-toe. Don't walk away. Don't say, okay. Don't defend. Stand there, look him in the eye. Get yourself nice and calm while he's going at it. And you reply, boss, I understand that you think the project ought to be finished. Okay, so you just let him know, I heard you. He thinks you're moving slow, so backtrack really quickly. From my point of view, the time I'm investing in it now will save time and money in the future. So he doesn't say, I'm doing this. From my point of view, he's being nice. He's just sharing his own truth. And if you're lucky, because you stood toe-to-toe and everybody else runs away from him or defends or attacks, that might work. That might be all that's necessary. The boss may say, well, I guess that's okay. When will he be done with all this hullabaloo and wasting company time? Don't respond to that. He's just asking. He's triggered. He's just asking when it'll be done. I'll have a full report by our staff meeting on Thursday, and I've already found 3 ways to save time and money. Excited to share it. Thanks for keeping us all on task. Okay? Just encouraged him, and there's a good possibility he may calm down, but he may walk away and say a couple of parting shots. If he does, well, everybody's wasting my time. If it wouldn't be this company, I wouldn't be here. This company would be belly up by now. He might say a couple of mean things to you. Let it go. Forgive, okay? But what if that doesn't work? What if the boss continues to rage? They weren't able to hear it. You already know the answer. You blankety blank, 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 boss. Boss? Mr. So-and-so. You keep on saying his name until he finally says, what, you idiot? Backtrack again and share your truth again. Say the same thing, but say it in a different way. I understand you're having a problem with the pace of this project. Backtracking, giving them understanding, it's a form of compassion, is to backtrack and tell them you heard them. But then really quickly, but I'm not willing to discuss this if this is how you're going to talk with me. When you're ready to engage in calm, mutually respectful dialogue, I'll take all the time you want to talk. Have a great day. Sharing your truth. You lay down a boundary, okay? Now, if this sounds a little like nonviolent communication, which shares your observation, feeling, needs, and request, you're right. But in the case of the tank, you shorten it. You kind of skip some steps, okay? These people have gotten used to operating, especially if they're a tank a lot of the time, on a higher level of adrenaline output than most of us when they get triggered. The way I'm wired, if I acted like this regularly, I'd get an ulcer or a heart attack pretty quickly and die. I can't live with that much adrenaline flowing through me, but some types of people can. More power to them, I guess. God made us all differently. That they'll eventually get health problems from allowing these kind of negative emotions to course through their bodies, but some people can handle it better. When dealing with the tank, we need to be brief and to the point, and since we are Christ followers, we can't lose our cool. It says in Ephesians, don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, or anger gives a foothold to the devil. So here they're saying again, our anger lets the foothold. It's like they use climbing terms, so like a devil is attached to our souls at that point, clung on to us. If we lack self-control, any of us can turn into a tank at times. And I'm going to say this plainly. When we, according to the Bible, when we aren't controlling our anger, the doggone reality is that we are participating with a devil. Jesus said Peter was being filled with Satan when he was angrily chiding him, and in Ephesians it says anger gives foothold to the devil. In Mark 9, we even see a man who comes to Jesus about his son. You remember the story, who was so possessed by a demon of rage that in verse 18, the Father describes the manifestations of his anger and lack of self-control to Jesus. This family is really beset by anger. And he said, whenever the spirit seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground. Then he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. That's angry. That's also terrible parenting, because that's 2-year-old tantrums behavior that never got corrected. And we've all met 2-year-olds, haven't you? I've met 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old 2-year-olds, that never learn to control their anger. And it will eventually, that's the ultimate manifestation of someone who doesn't control their anger. They will give demons of rage more and more access to their emotions, bodies, minds. So when we're dealing with a tank, there's a spiritual element here. We are dealing with both a human and, according to Jesus and the apostles, also a demon, okay? That's why when we attack, we must pray hard. We must ask the Holy Spirit to fill us, to help us remain calm, because that demon wants to get into us as well, or have one of his satanic spirit demon friends get a foothold in us. One of the fruits of the Spirit, as we know that verse in Galatians, is self-control. And if we can't control our tongue and emotions, according to Scripture, I hate this, because I have been possessed by a demon. When I lost my temper at those people who stole that money from me, I now know there was a demon attached to me, because I was screaming. Yeah, I didn't curse at him, but I was very strong and very angry, and I didn't see them as a beautiful child of God, who I didn't try to help them. I didn't want to love them. We were possessed by a dark spirit. Sometimes we tell ourselves that we are justified when we're being a tank. Maybe some people say, well, I'm Irish. Or if you were around so-and-so, this meanie pants person, you'd act the same way. It doesn't change the fact that we got a demon on us and we're hurt, and we're hurting, wounding, and cursing people. It will be a tough conversation that we will have someday before Jesus. And we're like, hey, I was Irish, Jesus. I had a right to. And he's like, in heavenly worlds, we're going to have to talk about this. And we're going to discover we were wrong. There was no excuse. So the 5 steps to dealing with the tankers. Number 1, stand your ground. This is the hardest part. Stand there, stand calm, cool, and collected. If you have to take a minute to speak, if they say, what, cat got your tongue? You're like, don't speak until you know you can speak with love. If it takes 30 seconds, it takes a minute, it takes if they have to walk away because you're so raging, you don't want to open your mouth unless you can talk to them like this, You might have to wait till an hour. Go to your office, come back, hey, you're ready. The first couple times it might be that way, but stand your ground, keeping calm and centered. And step 2, interrupt their attack if necessary by calmly speaking their name. Quickly backtrack. Step 3, quickly backtrack to their main point. to minister to them by giving them empathy. 4, share your truth in just 1 or 2 sentences. And step 5 is called peace with honor. Authors Brinkman and Kirshner tell us to never close a door in a tank's face. That may antagonize them more. Instead, give them room to back off. In other words, if they're casting some parting shots at you, just forgive them for it. Here's the hard part. If there's any truth to their perspective, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say, I don't know if this is for sure, it's probably 100% of the time there's at least a shred of truth to their perspective. Maybe only 99% of the time. But if there's any truth, that they say 10 lies about you that aren't true, and there's even one of the things they say to you there's a partial, tiny 1% truth to that, that's what you focus on. And you have to listen to them, and there's probably going to be a grain or two of truth. And we have to own up to our own shortcomings. You don't have to agree with everything else they said, but you say, there's probably some truth to what you said there. And say the thing they said. Don't snivel. Don't make excuses. Accept the part that's true and thank them for their opinion. And if you can't find anything, which sometimes happens too, still thank them for their opinions. Thanks so much for sharing your opinion. Hey, maybe we'll have to agree to disagree, but I'm going to think about what you said. Okay? Maybe I'll come back to you tomorrow and say, hey, you were 100% right. You never know. Be gracious. Be thankful. I'll give you an example. Well, boss, I was trained at this company to do this particular protocol. But if you want me to change the protocol because it's more efficient, then I certainly will. And I thank you for your feedback. I'll get started right now. And when I have time, I'll provide you a summary of this decision for you to sign off on. And I'll send it to corporate so they'll know that I changed this portion of my job description on your directive. Up and at 'em. Have a great day. If you did that, there's a good chance that boss might say, wait a minute. I'm not really asking you to change your job description. I just wanted to yell at you. And they might not. But they might say, okay, sure. And then the higher-ups can say, yeah, well, I guess he wants you to change. But they may say, no, we don't want you to. This happened to me once at a job, and they ended up firing that person. They were really high up, and they'd been there for years. I'd been there like 6 months because they realized, and they looked into it, they discovered that this person was telling lots of people, lots of capricious things out of anger, and there's no way we can be successful because we were all told to do this, and then the next day told to do this, and it was bad. When dealing with a habitual tank, you're probably not going to win every battle. Know that going in. But you can win more respect. And it's been my experience that quite often your assertiveness truly wins that respect. Just the fact that you stood there, didn't defend, attack, or run away, and looked them in the eye, sometime, that's all it takes. And sometimes that tank may even become your ally against another tank who's a worse tank in the future. You're also modeling for them how to be assertive, how to gain respect, because that's what tanks really want, and get results without cursing, blaming, and ridicule. I'm going to close with some verses from Proverbs, because the ugly truth is every one of us has been a tank before, myself included, and thus has had Satan moving through our words, emotions, our bodies, according to Jesus. We've all had a devil working in us when we've spoken in or acted in anger. It's not easy, and most people try to hide their anger and don't act like tanks, at least in public, but it comes out in gossip, snide remarks, silent treatment, manipulation, bitterness in their hearts, unforgiving and unkind ways. So here's some closing words from the Old Testament. Help us all control our anger. Maybe I'm probably going to read this every day. I did this week. Keep the devil from gaining a foothold in our lives. This is from Proverbs. It says, pleasing words are like honey. They are sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. And we know nowadays they've discovered that positive words can actually thicken bone. Osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, by thinking positively, they have improved someone's bone density 10 to, I think it's 12%, in a very short time, just 6 weeks, by someone spending 10 or 15 minutes a day thinking positive thoughts, saying nice things like you're strong, you're beautiful, you're special, you're healthy. So this is the actual fact that we can increase our health and the health of others by speaking pleasingly to them. Going on, there's a way that looks right to a man. I think this is the right way. But in the end is the way of death. Anything that I think, I'm going to do this because this seems right to me, is the way of death, is what it's saying. There's the God way, which is usually exactly opposite from the way I want to do it. I want to do things my way, God says to do it this way. So we need to do the God way, because my way ends in death. Death of my soul, ultimately. Going on, a man or a woman, it says man, but it means human. A human of no worth looks for wrongdoing. His words are like burning fire. If I say strong words, God says, I'm a man of no worth. I'm a worthless person. If I say strong words, even if James comes up to me and starts yelling at me, if I yell back at him, I'm a man of no worth. James would never do that. He's the kindest guy I know. A bad man spreads trouble. One who hurts people with bad talk separates good friends. A man who hurts people tempts his neighbor to do the same and leads him in a way that is not good. And that's true, right? When someone's yelling at us, we're usually tempted to become a bad person too by yelling at them. It says, he who is slow to anger is better than the powerful. You know how to be more richer in God's eyes than Bill Gates or Donald Trump or some of the Carnegies or Rockefellers, or I don't know, whoever the rich people are. It's better if I can be slow to anger. I have more power ultimately in what matters than even the most powerful, richest, people who rule the world. And it goes on to say, and he who rules his spirit is better than he who takes the city. So I'm more powerful in God's eyes. We're more powerful in God's eyes if we rule our spirits than even the best general, Alexander the Great or whatever. Let's not be tanks, and let's not let others, tanks, turn us into them. And we got to remember, we got something good on our side. We got the blood of Jesus, the life and love of Jesus. If you'd like to stand, if you can, and sing, you can either look in your hymnals at 243 or look up on the screen. The blood that Jesus shed for me will never lose its power. The blood that Jesus shed for me, way back on Calvary. It's the blood that gives me strength from day to day. It will never lose its power. It reaches to the highest mountain, it flows to the lowest valley. The blood that gives me strength from day to day, it will never lose its power. It soothes my doubts and it calms my fears, and it dries all my tears. The blood that gives me strength from day to day, it will never lose its power. It reaches to the highest mountain, it flows to the lowest valley. The blood that gives me strength from day to day, it will never lose its power. Let's sing that chorus again. It reaches to the highest mountain, it flows to the lowest valley. The blood that gives me strength from day to day, it will never lose, it will never lose, it will never lose its power. God, we need help with this. This is hard. It's the hardest thing ever. Man, man, oh man, I am not great at this. At times, I've been a tank. And I'm maybe a tank again. If someone's tanking it out in front of me, yelling and screaming or whatever, oh God, give us strength. Help us this morning to open ourselves up to your presence and take the time, do the work. Maybe listen to this sermon again, maybe get that book and read that chapter. If we have a problem when someone's yelling and screaming at us, we tend towards getting angry or running away or whatever it is, defending ourselves. Give us the courage to work on these skills so that we may bless even this meaty pantses sort of person when we encounter them. And shed your kingdom of light, shine your kingdom of light on everybody we meet. In Jesus' name, amen.